All right, what's up, guys? VV back with another video. And in today's video, we've got a pretty fun one lined up here. Notice the title. It is How Did We Get Here? Okay, so the whole idea behind today's video is we're going to be talking about how the leaders have power crept over time, the natural evolution of the One Piece TCG leaders. So if you're a newer player, this will probably act almost as like a history lesson on the early beginnings of the game, and how we got to where we are now. Okay, so let's do this, guys. Let's get right into it. As per usual, I will have everything timestamped in the general description, and I'll have all relevant links and stuff like that in the comments section below. If you guys have any comments, questions, or suggestions, please do not hesitate to put those down in the comment section below, or hop on the VV Theory Discord. Link will be in the channel description. Today's video is brought to you by Nin Garden. To celebrate their 1-year anniversary, they're thanking the fans with a huge sale. Nearly everything in the store is $30 or less. And you can use my code, the VV Theory, at the checkout for an extra 5% off on your next order. Alright, so just to start off by laying down a foundation, a groundwork with kind of how the One Piece TCG started off, right? What was the foundation like for this game when it first started off? Well, for those who are not aware, there was mono-colored leaders that were 5,000 power and 5 life for pretty much, you know, that was the basis, right? That was the complete bottom line that they would build everything off of. Okay, and also when it came to characters, there were vanilla characters that they built around as well, but we're going to be more focused on the leaders in today's video, right? So in this case here, notice we have Red Luffy at the bottom left, in the middle we have Sakazuki, and at the top right we have Don Quixote do Flamengo. And they have a lot of things that are, you know, totally different, but they have two things in particular, really three things in particular that are very much the standard for what you could expect for a leader to be built around, right? They have only one color, they have 5 life, and they have 5,000 power. Okay, each one of these leaders has that in common, and that was the structure by which Bandai was really balancing the entire game. Okay, now, with that in mind, as things moved on, right, things did move on, and we saw some changes happen, and then we started seeing, you know, very early on, even in the first block, right, even in the first set, it looked like Bandai was okay with this idea of, okay, let's give the players multicolored leaders, like specifically dual-colored leaders. We have not gotten into any kind of 3-color leaders just yet or anything more than that, outside of Rainbow Luffy, which is intended for sealed tournaments, right? But Bandai was okay with the idea of, okay, let's allow players to experiment with 2 different colors, but we're going to put a restriction on that. We're going to put a condition. We're going to allow them to have these 2 different colors to work with. We're going to let them have the 5,000 power base for their leader, because that's, again, we're not going to get into vanilla characters and how those are built around, you know, and how those balance the game. But if we had, you know, if they had made a leader 4,000 power, that would have probably been way too much of a detriment. But the way that they decided to remedy that problem is, okay, we give them 2 colors, we give them 5,000 power. Well, what's going to be the downside? Well, we're going to make them into 4 life leaders. Okay, so remember, the monocolor leaders, 5 life, dual color leaders, 4 life. Now, I don't think that was necessarily the best way of dealing with this, and Bandai probably couldn't have known that from the very beginning, but for those who remember far enough back in Block 1 and even in Block 2, there was really just monocolor leaders that seemed to be running away with most tournaments, and with that being I mean, there were a few exceptions, like Red Green Trafalgar Law was an exception, and then once we got to Block 2, we had Blue Black Sakazuki and Red Purple Law, but that presented its own problems, right, where you had these dual color leaders that were just too strong. They were just simply too strong. It becomes a very hard thing to balance, and that's what I do think they should have done, was actually balance around the ability on the leader. Okay, so in other words, I think that Bandai should have made 5,000 power dual-colored leaders, or multicolored leaders, and make them 5 life, but then give them a very restricted effect, or an effect that's not super powerful. Maybe make the monocolored leaders, give them a more powerful effect, since they only get to work with 1 color, and then give the dual-colored leaders a less powerful effect, but still give them 5 life. Because I think that presented a lot of problems for Bandai moving forward. However, this is the direction they took it, and they had other things in mind, too, that we're about to go over in a minute here. So moving on from here, there were some multicolored 5,000 power 5 life leaders that came out, but they could not attack. So Bandai was definitely playing around with the idea of like, okay, let's make a 5,000 power 5 life dual color leader, but let's put some type of major restriction on them. And for the most part, you know, most of them were built like this, like what you see on the screen here, where they just cannot attack. They have a strong effect, but they can't attack. And for those who play the game, having, you know, you'll know, having a leader that cannot attack is very, very hard to deal with. Now, there were exceptions as well. I do want to mention, I know some people are thinking like, well, what about this leader? What about this leader? Understand, when we're talking about the base level, the foundation level on which this game is built with all the most, you know, standard built leaders, there are still exceptions. I understand that. And I have them here. Like, these are outliers or exceptions. Notice we have Edward Newgate. This was a 6,000 power 6 life leader. This leader was a real problem early on. For those who are not aware, for those who are getting into the game now, for the newer players, Edward Newgate was an absolute monster when it first came out, and it had its own problems, okay? And now, this is a 5,000 power 4 life mono-colored leader, but it has an ability that kind of gets around that. The leader effect can kind of... You have at least 5 life with a leader effect like this, right? And then Vegapunk, of course, this is a 5,000 power 2 life leader that cannot attack either. Like, not only is it a 5,000 power 2 life monocolored leader, it also can't even attack. Okay, but for the cost of 1, you can gain a life pretty much every turn or cheat out some really big bodies, you know, characters that are much bigger than 1 cost. You're going to be able to cheat them out for 1, which, you know, gives this leader its own thing. So Bandai is no stranger to just experimenting with how they want to mess around with, you know, the leaders in this game and power creeping them. But now that we're right here, I do need to mention something. I wish Bandai would calm down with the power creeping leaders and focus more on characters. Okay, I'm going to try to elaborate more on that as we go on, but keep that in mind. This idea of fooling around with the leaders' powers and their life count and things like that, not being able to attack versus being able to attack, I wish they would mess around with other factors, but again, we'll elaborate with that over time here. Now, the first time that Bandai really went for it, so to speak, right? They actually decided, you know what? We are going to make some crazy leaders. We're going to try to push the limits. We're going to push the boundaries of what leaders can even do. I think the first time they did that, okay, other than with Edward Newgate, that was definitely pushing the boundaries there, and that was all the way back in OP02. One more thing I want to mention real quick, guys, while we're here. Notice I did pull these screenshots off the sim, so the translations might not be perfect, and even notice right here with Vegapunk, it says this is a block 1 card. That is not correct. So, you know, be careful when reading these, guys. These are not from the official website. I just pulled these off the sim real quick for today's slideshow. Okay, had to get that out of the way real quick. Okay, now back to what we were saying. In ST10, Bandai decided, you know what? We are going to try some things, right? And this, if I remember correctly, this is when we saw our very first 3-life, 6,000 power leader, and I think this also allowed us to kind of peer into the mind of what Bandai was working towards, right? So we saw a dual color, 4-life, 5,000 power leader. Remember, we already saw that, right, guys? We already saw this in action. They had been messing with this for a while. However, with this leader, Trafalgar Law, they decided, you know, we're going to give this leader a potentially very powerful effect, right? So yes, we're going to keep it at 4 life and make it a 5,000 power dual colored leader or multicolored leader. However, what we're going to do is we're going to, you know, see how strong we can make the leader's effect. It ended up getting banned. Hey, spoiler warning, guys, it ended up getting banned. They pushed a little too far with this one. Excuse me. Now, the next one here is most interesting. Focus in on the middle here, guys, with Eustace Kid. I'm going to be mentioning this quite a bit going forward, but they experimented with something that I don't think they went fully in on enough. Notice with Eustace Kid, this is a multicolored, you know, red-purple leader here with 5,000 power and 5 life, okay? And it did have a condition on it. Okay, so just like what we saw with Nefeltari Vivi here and Rebecca, they can't attack. They're dual color leaders, 5 life, 5,000 power, but they can't attack. However, Eustace Kid here, Eustace Captain Kid, he was the first leader that we saw that was dual color, 5,000 power, and 5 life that could attack. Okay, and I think they should have explored this more, and again, I'm going to elaborate on that much more as we get towards the end of the video. But keep that one in mind there, guys. I feel like they skipped a step, and we'll talk about it later. Then next up, they explored this idea of, okay, let's make a dual-colored leader, okay, a multicolored leader technically, but 2 colors here, with red, purple Luffy. That's a 3-life, 6,000 power leader. Okay, with this one, it seems like they kind of learned their lesson, right? We saw what a 6,000 power 6-life leader can do, so let's go ahead and give them access to a second color pool, and we're going to cut the life in half. I think Bandai kind of struck gold with that idea. I think this was really good. I did not like it at first at all, but I think they actually did a very good job with this idea of having a 6,000 power leader, dual colored, with 3 life. And who knows, in the future, maybe they'll be able to mess around with an idea of having a monocolored leader with 6,000 power and 4 life. We'll have to see. You know, we'll tackle that as we get to it. Now, like I said, in ST10, this is where Bandai was like, man, let's just see what kind of limits we can push with the leaders. And I think they did pretty good. You know, with one exception, Trafalgar Law might have been a little bit too strong. But other than that, Eustace Captain Kidd was completely fine, a little bit underpowered, a lot of people would say. And then Monkey D. Luffy was doing actually pretty decent at a tournament level. It wasn't really running away with anything, but it was able to compete. It was actually able to compete at the biggest level. Okay? All right, so from here, we get into a whole new era of what they're trying to get away with now, right? What Bandai's trying to push and what they're trying to make work. And that's where we get to OP12, OP11 in particular, and then EB02. And now, so like I said, guys, what ended up happening is after ST10, I feel like Bandai was kind of content with what they had, and they're like, okay, this is the new model going forward. We're going to have these 4-life, 5,000 power dual color leaders. We have to give them a little bit more powerful effects so that they can compete against the monocolor 5-life, 5,000 power leaders. So that's where, you know, Trafalgar Law kind of led the way to what I think a lot of the leaders we see today that were able to compete, like, you know, green, purple Lim and other decks like that are multicolored, including this next one here we're about to look at with Monkey D. Luffy. But that presented a new type of situation we'll talk about, okay? But then with the 6,000 power leaders with Luffy, the red-purple Luffy, it's like, okay, this seems like it's pretty balanced, okay? From this groundwork, excluding Red-Purple Kid, they skipped a step there. Excluding Red-Purple Kid, they were pretty happy still with this monocolored 5-life, 5,000 power leader thing, the dual-color 5,000 power 4-life leader thing, and the dual-color 6,000 power 3-life leader, okay? But power creep kept on happening, and again, I wish they hadn't power crept the leaders in particular. I wish they would focus more on the characters. And look at what we have here. Look at what we have here, guys. We get to blue-purple Luffy and green-purple Luffy. Now, yes, some people might be thinking, of course it matters what support is built around these leaders. I 100% agree with that. You won't have any disputes from me here. I will not be, you know, going against that idea. However, Blue-Purple Luffy's ability, what they decided was, okay, well, we have a 6,000 power 3-life dual-color leader. That part we know works. We've seen it work with Red-Purple Luffy. Now, in OP11, they decided, let's see how much we can push the leader effect to see if it's broken or just right or underpowered. And unfortunately, they made it, I think they made it a little bit too strong, right? However, this is probably not the worst issue on the board here because a 6,000 power 3-life leader we have seen works pretty well. Green-Purple Luffy presents another issue. Green-Purple Luffy is kind of a 6,000 power 4-life leader if you think about it, okay? You know, it has the activate main once per turn, Dawn -2. If you only have Straw Hat Crew type characters in play, you can set up to 2 of your rested Dawn cards as active, and then this leader gets plus 1,000 power until the end of your opponent's next turn. And I honestly think that it was probably at this point right here that I think Bandai might have messed up a little bit with Blue Yellow Nami in particular and Green Purple Luffy, where they're pushing into an area. Maybe they didn't mess up, actually. Maybe they're trying to push the entire game into a specific area, and we have to keep an open mind to that. We'll talk about that more at the end as well. But it's at this point right here that Bandai really started pushing power creep, I think, because before that, they were really just trying to establish, okay, what do we want the core of the game to look like? And I think they did a pretty good job, all things considered, right? We talked about it, but we had the 3-life, 4-life, 5-life mixture there, right? The 3-life 6K leader, the 4-life 5,000 power dual-color leader, and then the 5-life 5,000 power monocolor leader. That was a pretty nice setup they had. But right here, they started really pushing the boundaries, specifically with Green-Purple Luffy, because now you're kind of dealing with a 4-life 6,000 power leader. That's right, not like what you see to the left here with the 3-life 6,000 power leader. This is almost a 6,000 power 4-life leader. And I know some people might say, well, no, the first attack, you're probably going to be a 5,000 power leader. That's true. However, it doesn't take away from the fact that now you got to ignore one attack that game, and now you're going into this 6,000 power range, probably for the remainder of the game, right? So very, very powerful effect there. And then with Blue Yellow Nami, not as much. I think this was a stepping stone to what we're going to look at in the next slide. They decided, okay, let's give a leader some very powerful effect here to buff themselves defensively, okay? And I can give you guys a little sneak peek here. We're going to look at that in a minute with Red, Green, Luffy. And what I'm really trying to say is all of these were stepping stones into what we're about to see in OP13, okay? So with Nami, it's not that this leader's broken, right? And it's not even necessarily that any of these leaders are broken, by the way. It's just that they're slowly power creeping upwards and upwards and upwards. And if Bandai keeps this up, they're going to get to the OP13 situation where it's like, wait a minute, and we haven't gotten there yet. But these leaders are extremely powerful, at least at a baseline level, okay? So again, just to wrap up this slide here, this is kind of where we're at now currently in the game. And we have, this blue-purple leader here with Luffy, extremely powerful. It's a 6,000 power, 3-life leader. That part's probably fine, but I think the effect was a little bit overtuned. With green-purple Luffy, though, this kind of ends up being a 6,000 power, 4-life leader. And, and it also, yes, it does have a stipulation where you have to build the entire deck around Straw Hats, but Bandai took care of that for us with the support. And then last but not least, Blue Yellow Nami. This, I think, ended up leading into the direction of what we're going to see with Red, Green, Luffy, and OP13, where it's like, okay, let's allow these leaders to have incredibly defensive effects that kind of push them over a 5,000 power leader, because this is almost a 7,000 power 4-life leader defensively, right? And that, I think, ends up justifying what we're going to see in this next slide here. Okay, so here we go. Buckle up. Moving into OP13. Spoiler warning right up front here. If you have not seen these cards and don't want to see them, now's your chance to turn away. Is this going to become the new norm? Okay, again, we've kind of seen the progression now in this slideshow. They started off with very, humble roots, right? Very wholesome, modest, humble roots, and now we're here. And let me just break down this page for those who don't know what all these leaders do yet. Goldie Roger is a 7,000 power 5-life leader. Okay, with 2 colors. It's not even a mono-colored leader. It is a dual-colored leader with 7,000 power and 5 life. Well, how is that fair? Well, they put 2 negative stipulations or conditions on this leader to justify it, at least in their minds. I'm not saying it's done perfectly. I'm just saying that was the justification, right? That was the thought process, the logic on it. If you have any Dawn cards on your field, you have to give 1 Dawn card that would be added during your Dawn phase to your leader. Okay, so if you're going into your 6th Dawn turn, you actually have to give 1 Dawn to your leader, and you only have 5 Dawn to work with. So you're working with 1 less Dawn every turn, and on top of that, if you have 9 or less Dawn, so in other words, if you don't have 10 Dawn, you're going to have to give this leader minus 2,000 power on your turn and your opponent's turn. So it ends up working like a 5-life, 5,000 power dual-colored leader that late game ends up being a 7,000 power buff, right, or a 7,000 power leader, which I'm going to talk about that more in a minute, and I'm hoping that Bandai is actually working towards this as the new norm. Again, I'll talk about that more in just a minute. Let me finish this slide here. Sabo in the middle, this one's really interesting. How things have changed, right? Goodness gracious, this is a 5,000 power 5-life leader with 2 colors, just like what we saw with Goldie Roger. Because technically, Goldie Roger is a 5,000 power 5-life leader to start off the game, but they're still a dual-colored leader. Sabo here is a 5,000 power 5-life leader, but listen to this. It has a condition. If you have 4 or more life cards, give this leader minus 1,000 power. So in other words, until you're down to 3 life, this is just a 4,000 power leader, even on your opponent's turn. So it makes it very easy for them to attack into you early on. However, the Dawn times 1 effect says if you have a character with a cost of 8 or more, all of your characters and leaders gains plus 1,000 power. So what ends up happening here, this card actually power creeps slightly ahead of what we saw with green-purple Luffy. This red-black Sabo ends up being a 6,000 power 5-life leader. Okay, and it buffs your entire board, by the way, not just your leader, once you have the 8 cost or higher character on the board. And for those who might be thinking like, yeah, but you have to have this 8 cost or bigger character on the board. Guys, again, Bandai's taken care of that. Okay, Bandai has taken care of it in the same way they took care of green-purple Luffy. The support surrounding Sabo allows them to have an 8 cost character on the board as early as turn 2. And you have to understand the way that life works in this game. We got to skip around a little bit, guys, but there was a reason these leaders weren't doing very well. Yes, you can joke about how their effects were not very powerful or the support was not good enough, and those things do have some merit to them for sure. There's definitely some argument to be had there. However, I think what Bandai learned very, very early on is having a 5-life leader versus a 4-life leader was actually too big of a wall to climb over for the 4-life leader. They just could not compete with the 5-life leaders until you started giving them insanely powerful support to build around them. Okay, and I think Bandai learned that, and that's why we've kind of gotten to this point. Guys, compare what we're looking at on the screen right here. These are 5-life, 5,000 power leaders that cannot attack, that are dual colored, that have pretty good effects. But guys, let me ask you this, and again, you can say stuff in the comment section below. Please do, guys. Would you rather have Nefeltari Vivi or Rebecca that can attack over any of these two? Well, we've only gone over 2 of these leaders so far. We're about to go over Luffy, which I personally would rather have Sabo or Goldie Roger over Blue-Black Rebecca or Red-Blue Nefeltari Vivi, even if they could attack. Because in the late game, my Sabo is a 6,000 power leader, and this Goldie Roger is a 7,000 power leader, and they're all dual color leaders, and they can all attack. And hopefully that gives some people some perspective here on how much the game is power crept to this point. Okay, now last but not least, let's talk about Luffy here, Red-Green Luffy. This is another OP13 leader. It is a 5,000 power 4-life leader. Okay, why did they do this after everything we just saw? Listen to this effect, guys. Dawn ×1 on your opponent's attack. If you have 5 or less active Dawn cards on your field, you may rest any number of your active Dawn cards. Up to one of your leader or Straw Hat type characters gains plus 2,000 power for each Dawn that was rested by this effect. So understand, this Red-Green Luffy is very similar to Blue-Yellow Nami in OP11, where you're not, okay, with Nami, you just trash 1 card from your hand, right? And now you're a 7,000 power leader for the rest of the turn on your opponent's turn if you have 1 Dawn attached. Well, now Red-Green Luffy here, he doesn't become 7,000 for the rest of the turn. However, if you have 5 Dawn active on your opponent's turn, every Dawn you tap ends up working as a 2k counter. Okay, so you see where Bandai has kind of pushed things, and hopefully this worked. We're not done with the slideshow yet. We're not done with this video yet, but hopefully this made some people understand, like, how did we get to this point? Hopefully this kind of explained the natural progression that Bandai went on. Now, after having said all that, what I hope Bandai does going forward, I think this 7,000 power idea, that's very interesting. It's very cool for Goldie Roger. I'm sure it's very thematically appropriate with how powerful Roger is. But I'm very hopeful for the future of the One Piece TCG that Bandai says something to us very soon. It just says, hey, you know what? Yes, we've power crept everything to this point where we're at right now, and this is the new norm going forward, but not power creeping any further, right? Yes, power creep has to exist in every set. We all know that, right? For the newer players out there, what is power creep? It's this idea that we have to print stronger cards in the new sets so that there's even a reason to buy the new sets. Otherwise, if my deck from the last set is stronger than all the new cards coming out, why would I even invest in buying that? It's not a great business model, right? But I think Bandai can get around that if instead of power creeping their leaders, maybe power creep certain cards, where if they get too strong, no problem. Either A, they'll rotate out at some point anyway, or B, we can just ban the 1 card, kind of like what happened with Gecko Moria. I know a lot of people were upset when that card got banned. However, you still got to play with whatever leader you were playing beforehand, and they can build future support around that leader to compensate for the card that was lost, right? And that's what we're seeing now with Black Yellow Luffy. They lost Gecko Moria, which was a really major piece to the puzzle to make that deck work. Well, now we're seeing a new card that came out in PRB02 that takes the place of Gecko Moria. It's not the same, but it's at least something they can do to better balance it moving forward, okay? So again, just to kind of summarize on this slide here, I am actually pretty happy with the direction Bandai's going with the game, and I hope this leads to one thing in particular. Number 1, a new baseline, a new foundation on which the game should be balanced, because I think this will give Bandai a lot more designer space to print some really interesting, cool, new, strong cards moving forward, right? And most importantly, I hope they get used to this idea right here in the middle. I would like to see the 5,000 power 4-life dual color leader idea. I would like to see that disappear. I want to see every leader in this game built around a 5-life, standard 5-life foundation, or whatever you want to call it, even if it's a dual color leader. So with the case of Sabo here, yes, this is a 5,000 power 5-life dual color leader, but notice how they balanced it. If you have 4 or more life cards, this leader has minus 1,000, okay? So until you're down to 3 life, you're actually just a 4,000 power 5-life dual color leader. I think they handled that very well. And then as you get to 3 life, you become a 5,000 power leader. And then over the course of the game, as you get a stronger board, you actually become a 6,000 power leader. I'm very happy with the way they designed this card. But at the same time, I don't know if the 6,000 power part was necessary, but who knows. I am hoping that Bandai focuses more on this package moving forward. The dual color, 5,000 power, 5 life leader, very nice. Okay, we got a few more slides to go over here. And this goes over what I was just saying, and this is even like the title screen card that we looked at, right? Did Bandai skip a step? I think I had blue-purple Kaido on the intro screen, or the intro, what's it called? the intro slide. But hear me out, guys. Notice what happened here. It seems like Bandai skipped a step, where we have a 5,000 power, 5 life, dual color leader that cannot attack. Okay, then we get to a 5,000 power, 5 life, dual color leader that can attack, but it has a condition early on that weakens it with Eustace Kid, where it's, notice it says your turn. If you have 4 or more life, this leader has minus 1,000 power, but it's only on your turn. So on your opponent's turn, you're still a 5,000 power leader. It's not too hard to defend. But again, once you have 3 or less life, you're a 5,000 power leader. Okay, that was nice. But then they went straight to Sabo, and this is almost like a 5 life, 6,000 power leader. That's where I feel like Bandai skipped a step, and I wish moving forward they would focus on this. I know I sound repetitive, guys, but bear with me. This 5 life, 5,000 power dual color leader, not 5 life, 6,000 power dual color leader. I don't think we need that, or like what we saw on the last screen, a 5 life, 7,000 power leader. Because when it comes to this game, I know I started to elaborate on this a few times, but you have to understand the way the game flows, right? Typically what happens is your opponent's going to get a few attacks in before they really establish a board for you to worry about. Well, one of the biggest problems with the dual colored leaders in the past, the four life dual colored leaders, the ones that could attack, well, when you attack into them early on, they have 1 less life that can soak up an attack. That's 1 attack that they can't ignore, right? Because they only have 4 life versus something like a 5 life leader, okay? And it's like, well, wait a minute. That's 1 less card I get to draw from life. That's 1 less potential trigger I could have gotten from life, and that's 1 less attack that I could have ignored from my opponent to try to win this game. And that adds up massively over the course of the game. So even in this situation here with Sabo, notice this, like early on, you're a 4,000 power leader. If they swing for 6,000 into 4,000, you're probably taking that hit. But guess what? You still got to ignore that attack. In the same way that a mono-colored leader could have done the same thing as 5,000 power. If your opponent swings for 6, you could just ignore that attack and go down to 4 life. And now it's almost like you were an original dual-colored leader. You're fine, you ignored your opponent's entire attack, and now you got to draw a card from your life in the process, potentially getting a trigger and going from there. Okay, so hopefully that made sense. So that's why I have this question on the board here. Did Bandai skip a step? Why are they not trying to build more of the dual-color package around the 5 life, 5,000 power, idea? And I think I've heard a lot of people talk about this because this has been a topic we've talked about many times on the stream. I have to shout out the stream real quick, guys. I stream every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern to 12 a.m. here on YouTube, guys. So be sure to come check it out and hang out with us and talk about some One Piece TCG. Okay, we have a good time on there. We have a lot of fun. I try to interact with the chat as much as possible. I try to read every single message. Okay, and we talk about this topic all the time on the stream, where it's like, okay, let's make this the new standard, and then Bandai can build from there. And that's what I was going to say is, okay, well, if they make 5,000 power 5 life dual color leaders the new norm, well, what about the monocolored leaders? That's a question I get all the time, and I think that's a very easy fix. Make the monocolored leaders have a slightly more powerful effect than the dual colored leaders. But then you could still build everyone around this 5,000 power 5 life model. Now, yes, there are still 6,000 power leaders in the game, and who knows, going forward, maybe they should be more conditional, like what we see with Sabo here. Not the best example because this is a 5 life leader, but maybe more like what we saw with green-purple Luffy, where it's a conditional 6,000 power, but then you have 4 life. I think that would balance it a little bit more. I think that's fine. Nami's also probably done in a fine way, and same thing with red-green Luffy. If they're going to have these 4 life leaders, they need to have some way to go to 6,000 or 7,000 power very easily on the opponent's turn. Maybe that'll be the way to fix that moving forward. But again, I hope they focus more on the 5 life 5,000 power package. Okay, and then for the mono-colored leaders, you can give them insanely powerful effects. Guys, Shanks, I'm talking about just the leader Shanks, the red Shanks leader. That effect is incredible. Minus 1,000 power for the turn to a character or a leader. That is just absolutely incredible. That lasts for the entire turn, and it was free. Okay, look at Joribani. pay 1 and rest down a character or leader, on your opponent's attack. Incredibly powerful effect there. They can make the monocolor leaders still very powerful by making effects that are super powerful and making cards that might be restricted to them, like what we saw with Black Smoker, with the TCG that came out in that starter deck. Okay? All right, let's keep moving. So, again, I think Bandai did skip a step, though. They kind of went straight from the 5-life, 5,000 power dual color leader straight into the 6,000 power 5-life dual color leader or the 7,000 power 5-life dual color leader. And I hope they focus more on what we've been talking about here. Okay, now think of this as well, just as, let's just do a thought experiment here. Look at the leaders on the screen here. These are by no means very powerful. I don't think anyone would argue that these leaders are all that great. However, if you had just changed each one of these leaders into do nothing else to what you see on the screen here, and if Bandai had just made these into 5,000 power dual color 5-life leaders, I actually think these leaders probably could have started scratching their way into the more competitive matches. Now, I'm not saying they were going to win tournaments, don't misunderstand me, especially in the case of Uda. I mean, who knows? With this being a red-purple leader, if it had the 5-life, 1 extra attack it could ignore every turn, and then 1 extra card they're drawing from their life, notice their leader effect. When attacking, you may trash a film-type card from your hand, give up to one of your opponent's characters minus 2,000 power until the end of the turn, and then add up to 1 Dawn from your Dawn deck and set as rested. So you're ramping. Having that 1 extra life might have been all that this leader needed to make it more competitive. Not broken, just more competitive. And understand this as well, guys. I'm not saying that you can just add 5 life and that fixes every leader for the dual color leaders. I'm not saying that. These leaders were balanced in such a way that they had 5,000 power and 4 life and 2 colors. But some leaders, I think, actually the only fix they needed was just to have 1 additional life. I think Red Blue Marco needed 1 additional life, but who knows? People might have thought that was too powerful. That's why I didn't have that one on the slide. But either way, Marco's still a very solid leader. But if King over here, Purple Black King, if it was just a 5,000 power 5-life dual color leader with the same exact effects, I think all of a sudden we'd be seeing a lot more Kings on the ladder, right, or on the sim and even at tournaments. Green Black Isho, same thing. If this was a 5,000 power 5-life leader, yeah, seems good, right? That would be really solid, and I don't think it would even be broken. Okay, so I think that's about it. Let me see. So what's next? That's the question I'm going to end this this video with. What do you guys think is the right direction for this game? We kind of saw what's going on, right? We saw what's happening in OP13. Are you a big fan of having like the 5-life monocolor leader, the monocolor 5,000 power 5-life leaders? And the multicolored 5,000 power 4-life leaders, or would you rather see the game go to a new standard of multicolor 5,000 power 5-life leaders? And now, bad news, it kind of looks like that's the direction they're going, so maybe that wasn't the best question, but what do you guys think about that and why? Like, tell me what you guys think about it and where you're coming from. And of course, down here, we have the multicolored 6,000 power 3-life leaders, and now we have to add, a new one to the mix, right? Now we have to add the 7,000 power 5-life dual color leaders. So it seems a little silly, I know, guys. It seems a little bit crazy. But I do think, let me just say this, I think there is some light at the end of the tunnel. I actually think that Bandai, let me move my camera up here for the end. I think Bandai is power creeping the game to a specific point. I just hope they stop where they're at now in OP13, because I love where it's at, because that's going to allow them to build better leaders, and that be the new baseline. Yes, I understand in the process we're going to lose older leaders. They're just going to get power crept out of the game. And the only scary thing is if Bandai's not seeing things the way that I just explained them. If they're not seeing things the same way that I just said there, and they're just going to keep power creeping leaders, I think that's going to be a very slippery slope, very dangerous territory. Because, again, I know I said this earlier, and I almost forgot to elaborate on it till now. I think if they would just stop power creeping leaders, get them where they're at right now, have a new foundation, build the entire game around the 5-life, 5,000 power dual color leader. I'm sorry, guys. I know it's the last time I'll say that. I'll try to make that the last time I say that in this video. But if they would make that the new foundation, from there, I think we're in a very, very healthy point, and I think it will help the game and balance it. On top of that, if they would stop right there, then I think they can, up the power level of a few cards across the board and make a new baseline for the game that's actually going to be really, really fun, and it could be really, really good moving forward. Okay, so tell me what y'all think in the comment section below. This was meant to be a more fun, lighthearted, chill video where we do some thinking, we do some brainstorming, do some theory crafting, and because I know there's a lot of talk going on in the community right now, like what is going on? Is Bandai destroying the game? Are they just crashing and burning right here? And I think in some ways maybe you could say yes, but I think in a lot of other ways you could say no. Because if Bandai actually is still thinking about this and they're doing things in a specific way, if they power creep it to where they're at right now at OP13 and make that the baseline, don't do any more creeping past that with the leaders. Focus more on the characters, because once the leaders are at a certain point, then you can kind of mess with characters and push the limits there. Let me say it like this. Bandai, I think they've pushed the limits enough with leaders for now, and I hope to not see anything go past where we're at now. But I think with characters now, they can start messing around with some really powerful effects, like what we're seeing in OP13. Okay, so that's really what I hope happens. I would rather have more of a Gecko Moria situation. Let me go back real quick, guys, to right here with blue-purple Luffy and green-purple Luffy. I would much rather have a Gecko Moria situation again where they can just deal with one card, as opposed to having these leaders in here that are just, they're just way too strong. Again, that's just me personally. If you disagree, that's fine. I just ask that you please be respectful. Say something in the comment section below if you want to, but just please be respectful about it. Okay? All right, so just to kind of summarize now, just to finish up the video, let me summarize like this. I think the game's in a pretty decent spot going into OP13. I just hope it doesn't power creep anymore, okay? I don't want them to power creep the leaders anymore, right? Okay, I said I wouldn't say them. I'm saying one more time. If Bandai would focus around the 5 life, 5,000 power dual color leader package, I think we're going to be in good shape moving forward, okay? So that's number 2 with the new leader package that I'm hoping Bandai focuses on. And then number 3, if they're going to do power creep, I hope they focus more on doing it with characters or maybe even events as opposed to leaders moving forward. Because if they don't keep power creeping the leaders now, I think we're in a really good spot moving forward. All right, I'm done. Hope y'all enjoyed. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. And let me get the outro page on here real quick. Almost forgot, guys. Almost forgot the outro page. Can never forget that. Okay. So, guys, if you're supporting me in any way, shape, or form, guys, whether you're liking, subscribing, sharing, commenting, viewing, using my TCG Player affiliate link, if you're donating through Patreon or PayPal, if you're a Playmat supporter, YouTube member, part of the Discord community, thank you so much, guys. I really, really appreciate you. Thank you guys very much. If you're helping out the community in any way, thank you so much. Okay? All right, now I'm done. Hope you all enjoyed. Till next time, peace.